Chabacana.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm fine, very fine. And you?
Good.
Good. I think we will start this debate and discussion. Yeah, and the topic of this debate and discussion is the metrics that we have to, or that the museums should consider, or can be considered to create more, to be diverse, to be equal, and to be inclusive. Yeah, and for that I would like to, because today in the morning I give a presentation, yeah, but I would like to, because it was what's at the beginning, and I would like to repeat a little, because I'm talking about this kind of metrics, yeah. um, mhm. Okay, do you see the slideshow? I think so. Okay, now I was commenting that one of the key elements, and it will be very good to consider if a museum is diverse and inclusive, is the participation and how integrates the community, yeah, and how in which measure they decentralize the power and the decision making they are performing in different um, sections of the same in the museum, yeah. Actually, a museum, the diversification, the inclusion and equalization of in a museum could be from different part of the museums. In first instance, with employers, and the second, the attendance, yeah, and the third is the artist selection and the artworks collected, yeah. And one of the, I think one of the key elements to consider if a museum, or the metrics of the museum, is diverse or inclusive, is how they integrate their community, and in which way they integrate, and how they consider for the decision making. And for that, I think it is very important to consider the scope of the museum. The scope, if it's the museum, has some kind of influence, which influence the museum have, if it's local, regional, national, or international. And based on that, to define what are the minorities that the museum should integrate in the decision making. Okay, I was talking about today in the morning also about this project of odbk. That is a wiki archive where we put all we publish open um, all the documents and all these all our research we have doing in the last years, and to that that is accessible for all the people, yeah, and for us also for the museums and our collection, that they could start considering all these voices and all this research in their daily decision making. Actually, all this EMAMI documentation, it will be uh, transported to this, and everybody could find it there in this wiki. I will publish the URL in the ODBK website, yeah, in the EMAMI land page, that everybody can find the information and also all the documentation. If someone want to review the last talks or the last lectures, the discussions, and they want to, maybe there was missing someone, they can see it all there. Okay, I see. Yeah, there was this in the wiki. You can see it in the section of conference and events, the EMAMI conference archive. So, hello, Sara. Yeah, this is something very important, very confused, because many people think that that the diversity has to occur when there are some people who is selected, that is three blue, three yellow, and three, I don't know, three green, then it's gonna be diverse. And this is something like which variables and metrics should be considered to define a museum that is diverse. Yeah, for example, this participation. This is something that is how the museum integrate the community. And in a discussion with a curator for a museum, he told me that he was very important also to consider for this diversification and equalization of inclusion, also the for example, how big the rooms are, the size of the rooms are considered for one specific artist. Yeah, if it's for the women, this is only 20 meters, or for the men, this is 100 meters, or other way around. This is something that has to be considered. Also the space, and also the budget, how much money is focused in this kind of artist. Yeah, and one other aspect that I think it was very important is, and I think in Sharon in the talk with yesterday, he mentioned it, and it was very interesting, because this is something that we observed in another event that we organized in 2021 with 5 directors of museums, where they say that, for example, why they don't integrate artists from indigenous background, yeah, or from these all these kind of minorities. And one of the reasons that the director said is because there are no curators specialized in this kind of artists or this kind of art. Yeah, and this is a very interesting topic, very interesting tema, and there are so many points that has to be considered, because the topic is complex. The human are complex. Yeah, we are human are complex, and it will be to give it the first step to define that these metrics.
Yeah, it's very true. Can I just ask? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
That oof, I've got a working laptop now, so it's a lot better than yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious to say I think we're all in agreement here. In terms of getting into the how and metrics, I would like to add, I can't speak for, obviously David, you're based in Berlin, and the rest of you are based all over the place. But I think the one thing I can say, as far as our museums are concerned in the UK, is that there is an appetite for diversity. In fact, more to the point, museums are expected to do work around EDI. So I think I think the problem is not so much that they should be doing the work, but certainly the quality of work they're doing, how impactful the work is, and if it's actually working, you know. And I think, speaking from my point of view anyway, the metrics has to sort of measure the quality of, you know, maybe I'm stating the obvious here, but the metric should definitely measure, are you going far enough? Are you doing enough? Because it's very easy to do the minimum and then say, oh, but we're doing this work. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you have to do that work. So those are my reflections. And I just wanted to say to Sara yesterday about our discussion about the impact of World War II and etc., and making sure, you know, the repression of fascist voices and how that shouldn't, you know, that could be the danger of, you know, more than talking about it. As you probably noticed, I got a poppy here, and every November, everyone in Britain tends to wear a red poppy for that exact reason. And the term we use is lest we forget. And the whole point is not to forget. So, not to never talk about it or to repress the voice, but to talk about it. So, an unrelated point, but I wanted to just tell Sara about it because we were talking yesterday. Hope you don't mind.
Well, first of all, hello everyone.
Hello. Good to put a face to a name, eh?
Yeah, great. And thank you, Mark, for explaining the fascist thing. But of course, when I said fascism, I meant it as an example, but still, I think the term here is we don't forgive, we don't forget, right?
Yeah, well, that's...
We look at it, you know, are we going to look at it too? Or is there gonna be like all the discussions around some topics are going around the fact that they are wrong, and then we're gonna discuss in how many ways, all the ways that they are wrong. Like, I don't think that's that doesn't come from the place of diversity. Like, for example, Susan Tracy, I don't know if you guys are like familiar with her. She's an American artist, and once she did a live piece of art. It was a participatory piece, and it was about why police officers are going full violent against teenagers and teenagers of color especially. And she asked officers, like she was doing this piece help of the government and the officials of the city, and she invited teenagers and officers both in parking lots, and they set up small groups. Each consists of a couple of students, teenagers, and 2 or 3 officers. And they started talking about why, when an officer see a teenager that they conceive as a threat, they want
May I
to
just ask,
shoot
where in
them.
America was this?
I don't remember the name of the city, but if you
Okay.
search her name, it's
Yeah.
like the project. Sorry, I don't remember the name of the city. Yeah,
Oh no,
and
don't worry. I thought it might be interesting to know.
yeah,
But go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
yes, and they started about shooting each other, like, you know, and as they started to sometimes, like, these discussions led to some kind of fight, but not a physical fight. It was like a debate, but shouting or insulting, because there was a lot of rage in both parties, in police officers and in teenagers. They really wanted to kill those officers at some occasions because they were the ones who lost their friends by the hands of police violation. So that kind of taboo, I think, that kind of raw violence is what I'm talking about. I mean, like, if there is a fascist who wants to kill you as an immigrant because you're an immigrant, what if we, like, create some kind of a space for both of them to at least talk about it, yeah, to talk about it, to talk about their rage,
Yeah.
and like
How to do that
there was a,
constructively.
yeah, and when I, like, mentioned fascism as an example, I was like, we are shaming bad things too much. An example of it, I think, is the cancel culture. If a celebrity says something in some context, in some way, they're gonna be canceled, and their whole career is going down because of. But we're shaming it too much, and it's not going anywhere. It's not constructive in any way. That's one of the things I think, and also I want to link the things that I say to the topic of the museums. I think when we're talking about museums, we should differentiate public museums from private museums, like, and galleries and stuff. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Greetings
Hi.
from across the pond.
It's just really early in the morning. So
Oh, bless you.
Yes, I think we should differentiate the and the approaches we're gonna adopt for these two, because public museums are the property of the whole nation, and private museums, it's like more natural for them to looking out for money, like chasing money and looking for making profit out of their museum or gallery. So I'm gonna touch more about the approaches I think we should take in public museums. Now I see public museums, well, my ideal picture of a public museum is a place that people, local community, should be communicating through art. But what I see right now is treasuries. Each of them, their pride is in their most antique artifacts and like luxury paintings from luxury artists, which locals don't like. They don't care that much about that stuff. So
No, or they don't relate to it, is it? You have these cities with all these communities, and then you have these big civic places with beautiful oil paintings, which, to me or to other, I just love. But to the communities themselves, what is it to them? This is their space, but what are these objects?
yes, they don't have any rights. Like it's like they don't have any rights in there. Like it's not their place. And the problem, I think, lies in the fact that we are still looking at museums. I mean, we as like officials, and especially old ones, like really old ones. I was thinking that many of the officials and most powerful people who is running the world, many of them remember Cold War.
Yeah,
I think it's crazy. Their
wasn't that long
methods
ago?
are, yeah, like their methods, their fears, their traumas, still rooted in the traumas that are related to the Cold War or Vietnamese War or something like that. And it's crazy how today's world cannot relate to that, but is still adapting the same methods. However, I mentioned that because I think the officials who are regulating and making the rules, they still look at art as a luxury artifact, and also celebrities, whoever's funding the arts, like even if they are buying that artwork from like
Private
black
collections
artists,
and auction house.
they're buying it from a black artist or something. I mean, like minorities and stuff. They are chasing the class and the prestige, and still art's meaning is rooted in how much it can lend me class and prestige, like it did in 17th and 18th century Renaissance. Like Medici family, they were bankers, but they were not like from a noble family and aristocrats, and how they could upper their game and say we are cultured, we are like.
I mean, they did have power over Florence in literal terms.
They
But
had power. They had power, but they wanted that prestige, and they wanted to take that prestige, earn that prestige from art, and it's continued to America, like Rockefeller family, and like families in America who made money from oil. They wanted to kind of like compete with aristocrats or former powers of the world from Europe, like royal family of England, and they wanted to level up their
the financiers
their class. Yes.
Yeah.
So they started to do it to acquire to buy these artworks, and also many French artists at the time, they immigrate or at least visited US because they thought that their works are not the price on their works were much higher than they could sell their artworks in US way better, because the middle class family in US also were chasing like the trend. They wanted to be on that trend too, and a lot of them were buying like smaller cardboard to fit in their houses. And basically, the story short, I wanted to say that public museums, as the biggest, like some of the biggest museums in every country, they still look at art as something that can buy them class. Also, celebrities, people who have money, they look at it the same, and that's the problem with the money and with the funding of minority projects, artists, and stuff.
Well,
That was what I wanted to say.
well, it's I mean, what you were touching upon, Americans coming over to Europe to buy what at the time were, you know, great paintings like from the Impressionists. They would come and then they'd take it back to their own museums and to feed back into the point of communities. And I remember listening to this talk at a museum conference, and he was talking about Los Angeles and the whole, I think it's the Huntington collection there, or one of the big civic museums. And he was just saying, from all this art that came over from Europe, it was just one white rich guy who wanted to show off and then say, but I've given it to you, this is for you to see. And later on, now you look at it today, and these public spaces, I mean, in Los Angeles, with posh interiors and marble, and then these oil, I mean,
but from my point of view, when you were differentiating, so the public and private museums, I think the fact that you have a private museum, it doesn't give you the right to do what you want. Yeah.
No.
I mean, the government regulates many things from many institutions and business and private things. Why don't regulate that also? Yeah, because at the end they establish it, and they are for the people who is there outside. So it's the same responsibility for the public and for the private. Yeah, also for the galleries.
Yeah.
At the end, this is a responsibility. They don't want to take the responsibility because they are thinking only to make relationship and money. Yeah. But
do bear in mind that.
But I mean, then when you try to regulate that, then they call you communist. You are a communist. Yeah. And yeah, this is something.
Pay taxes, like every transaction, every artwork, they have to pay the taxes. So.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. Is that good that Michelle he show up, because I want to ask her now that, because we are talking about the metrics, and I don't know how you in your experience that you are doing in the institution that you work as a participant and a promoter of the day in the there, how you realize that you are really succeeding in this diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Yeah. I think because, like I tried to emphasize yesterday, that it's a top-down mandate at our college, and I enjoy it. I mean, I worked on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation when I was 21 years old, as soon as I got out of college, because I knew that it was something I should do, that I should go and volunteer for a year to just try and make amends, at least with myself, how America treated the indigenous people here. And, I do that regularly. I just try and keep myself regulated. But so I fit in great. But I will say we still have even in such a liberal institution, we have such a long way to go, because not every person, we've had a lot of workshops about implicit bias when we hire. Okay, so we all have to take a workshop about to reflect you know, and to be self-aware. And many times you'll walk into a space like that and people are talking and it's like, no, it's time to listen. You know, especially Americans, we love to talk, we don't really listen. And
No
I
comment.
agree with a lot of the museum issues that people have pointed out. I know I wasn't here the whole time and I'm trying to catch up. I got coffee right here and my brain's slowly working. But, you know, I will say that from an educational institution, that all those things that you just all articulated very well then become the cycle of education in America. So our students don't have, they're learning white European history. And I teach people from South America, people from India, people from Iran, Iraq, you know, and we have no representation in our history books. It's slowly changing. We have like one chapter about Islamic art, and it's a frou-frou chapter. It's about patterns. It's not about artists or, you know, men, you know. So I just wanted to say that once you start deep diving, like I think people think a lot of times you can just take like DEI paint and then like paint the wall with it and it's all fixed. And it's really like I've been doing DEI since 2019 and I still learn every day. Every day we have a conference or we have a meeting. I learn about myself. I learn about my neighbors, my people, you know, the people. And I think it really has to be a mission. And unfortunately, just the one thing I want to say about fascism, and I didn't catch all that what you said, particularly Sarah, and I don't want to seem like I'm too early to debate, but I do want to say that, you know, part of the criticism of Trump right now in America has to be extreme because like women's rights were taken away. You know, it is so bad here right now. Like, I don't know if that's projected, but like we have people, we have children dying who were like incest victims and rape victims in Texas, like 12-year-olds. I don't know if that's making it to you guys, but that's why I am extreme about him, because he set that all in place when he picked the Supreme Courts, and they're all really conservative fascists, you know? So and I had more rights than my daughters, you know? So like, I just think too, sometimes the reaction to fascism is critical. Like what we do at the college when we have people who are conservative and Democrats, like, and liberals, is we create like safe spaces where like people know that like politics won't be discussed in that space, but that you can bring kindness, you can bring, you know, understanding, you can bring compassion, and we actually create special spaces for that. And that took our college. Like, it wasn't always like that. We would have a discussion and people would be screaming at each other, and then we were like, you know, we have to be professional here, we have to be an institution. And so it's evolved. Even the way that we discuss things has evolved, and we call them like safe spaces, like a space where but we lead it with like a lot, like somebody will introduce and they will say, in this discussion, we are leading with kindness. In this discussion, we are not talking about politics. In this discussion, you know what I mean? And because we just had a post-reflection panel, and we weren't allowed to really talk about politics. We just had to talk about our worries and our concerns. And even our students were just like, I'm concerned, I'm transgender, I'm concerned, I'm a woman, you know, all the things that we hear will happen over the next 4 years. And it went really well. I mean, at the end, I think both sides talked, but you have to actually have the language in place and make those prefaces before everybody starts speaking, so it doesn't become like a brawl. And that's all I want to say. And I hope that doesn't sound too cranky or anything. I'm just, like I said, I just woke up.
Michelle, could I ask on that, if that's all right? Because obviously it's very interesting from this side of the Atlantic to what's going on over there. And I mean, obviously we can all guess what we view on Trump, and you said yourself, I mean, if I were to be a slightly controversial and say, at the end of the day, he was voted to be the president.
Yeah, and a lot of people are really upset about that.
Yeah, no.
Like almost 50% are
it
upset
was,
about
wasn't it? It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't one of those, it was a landfall. I do realise it was a bit close, like Brexit over here. But anyway, talking about these safe spaces and, how do we move forward from this? The point I suppose I'm making is that there's a reason Trump was put there, and or that he became, and I just wonder
because our nation is not DEI. we took a land from people. We still don't acknowledge that as a nation.
No.
We cause a lot. I'm going to give you the. I don't know if you really want to hear this, but I'm going to give you the real. I'm very aware. We cause wars. We are irresponsible with our power. I could go on, and I think
Michelle, I'm from Britain.
Needs a DEI lesson.
But at the end of the day, Michelle, my great-grandfather served in the British Empire, so I can't really criticize you any more than that. But as you said, America's not a DEI.
When I make those hats, those Trump hats, I don't know if anybody's seen those, but when I make those,
I loved it, by the way.
But I just want to bring this point, not to talk about myself, but this is just like a point that I've seen behind the scenes that I'm going to share with you. When I make those hats, the hats that are anti-American never get liked. I'll get like 40 likes with those. But many of those things are very true. It's not just him versus it's a lot. It's a lot of the politics and I make them anyway. I stick them up, but I always know the ones that are getting like a lot of likes. The ones where I make fun of him, I know they'll go up and people will be like sharing them and love them. But the ones where I have this one hat where I take America and I pretend like I'm ripping it off the hat. Like I have the strings kind of coming off the hat. And I actually said to my Instagram followers, I'm like, this is the least liked hat that I have. And because nobody wants, they want to poke fun. It's like a very we want to yell at each other on Twitter, but does that really solve the problems? Now, something like this conference and David's work and your work and Sarah's opinions and everybody here, that's what makes a difference, anyway.
I suppose my concern is, are we just preaching to the converted? I say throughout my DEI work is that obviously the work we do to improve and make EDI better for everyone is fantastic, but are we just talking to the people that want to listen? That the true challenge, I think, comes from trying to make EDI work, because to the people who don't quite agree with us or don't see the point, sell it to that. Sorry, go on.
No, that's all right. I just want to say that I work with a lot of younger, we call them Generation Z, and it's the Greta Thunberg generation, and they are really aware.
For that,
they are really, really aware. And they don't need DEI training. I don't know if it's because America deserted them with our gun laws and they had to bond with each other in order to survive mass shootings at schools. I don't know. They are so strong. They are so they know their rights, and even if they're not super close with the exact information, they know how to say it in a way that makes you go, oh, wow, and I really think it's only a matter of time to
which generation is that? Which age?
The generation we have Generation Z, which is right below millennials. It's it's like maybe 27 to about 14. And then the generation right underneath them is called alpha. We categorize our generations in America, and we give them, of course, we market them, we give them, it's all for capitalism. Anyway.
And that's found its way over here as well.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
We take a lot of your ideas, Michelle.
Yeah, I don't, but I do know that generation follows a different drum. And we also have a shift in religions and in politics and representation of people, and different groups and ethnic groups that have immigrated to America are growing like substantially faster than other cultures. And so I see it, and my hope is, and maybe I'm wrong, that it's really only a matter of time before, that generation kind of starts to, like AOC. I don't know if you follow her, but she really is symbolic. And there's a few more in our House of Representatives that are just very vocal. And I think it will, I hope that it'll be a matter of time before that blue wave or more liberal thinking, more open thinking starts to transcend locally and then hopefully up.
I do want to say about being in America right now, our metrics are changing. Like you're saying, there are a lot of younger people who are identifying as LGBTQ. There are a lot of people who are from mixed families, whether that is like anywhere from Southeast Asia or Africa and an American, or Europeans and Americans, or what have you. So when museums have to look at their publics, they have to be cognizant of this is a wide-ranging community with a variety of individuals coming to see their exhibits and speak with them about their, whatever they're talking about, whether that's art, whether that's history, whether that's science. And they have to interpret in a way that is accessible. So whether that's including Braille or Spanish or audio, sampling for people to be able to actually understand the didactic panels, those metrics should inform how we move forward with addressing our publics and being equitable to them, because that's what we're there to do as museums. So
I think what you just added, Anna, is basically what Michelle just said before you, as a matter of time, to keep these young people accountable and to keep them thinking in such a open-minded way. But I suppose my concern is thinking this is how the youth think and it's a matter of time, is that it's that, sorry, perhaps just a blunt saying of, we have a saying over here that if you're young and conservative, you got no heart. If you're old and liberal, you got no head. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but all I'm saying is, if those young people you talk about think, when they become 50, into the older generation, will they still think the same? Will the way mindsets work, shift?
I think
I do agree that it's hard for us to ever say that at any point in time you will have the same thought process as what you were when you were 20 or when you were 30 or onward. My parents were relatively more liberal, I remember, when I was a child than what they are now. And we have a massive difference in political opinion. But in talking to them about that, I often try to remind myself where they come from and what they grew up in and how they experience the world. And I try to reframe things in ways that they understand. So it's not necessarily saying that either end of the political spectrum is better at understanding the world in front of them. It's understanding that through the dialogues that we have together, we can actually gain further understanding of how we can maybe create closer to the ideal. It's not going to be the ideal. It'll never be the ideal. But the ways that you gain traction moving forward is through these discussions that actually facilitate people's intellectual growth and understanding of other people's perspectives.
Yeah. And I just want to add to that, Anna, that I love that you said that. And I just want to add that the younger generation that I'm speaking of, you know, they're probably not going to have Social Security. You know, they're probably not going to have, they have to go to school every day worried that they're going to get shot. These are not worries that baby boomers in America, they're probably not going to own their own home. You know, like we really are in a different world in America, and you can see it as, you know, like, you know, that idea that like you'll just move to suburbia and you'll have your own house and you'll be able to pay it off in 20 years. Students can't do that in America because they're drowning in student loan debt. You know, like there's a lot that has changed in America that is not that American dream anymore. And they are the voice that is saying, you know, that they need certain, you know, and I think it's also, that's why they're so strong, you know, and that's why they're so great. Like, I love that generation. And anyway, I just wanted to add the historical, I know Sarah wanted, but I just wanted to make those historical points that like, not only has mindsets changed, but they've changed because our economic comfort and as Americans is not the same as baby boomers, which is like 50s and 60s and 70s or whatever, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
It's quite similar over here.
Rawar, I hope I'm pronouncing their name right, saying in our public chat that Gen Z in Kenya are like that too. They've been having a leaderless and very well organized anti-government protests since June, every Tuesday and Thursday, and their cause is to push for leaders with integrity. Chapter 6 of the Kenyan Constitution. And also they add, thinking of how Nairobi and most of Kenya only has museums of national history and how it's mostly the history of the British in Kenya. So there's very little engagement with artists and Kenyan audiences, aside from class trips and the occasional lectures.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting to the point Michelle was saying about how we're only really in these schools learning about European history. I fear that a lot of the old colonies of the British Empire, how they learn about the British Empire compared to how we over in the UK in school were taught about the British Empire. We were just taught it was vanilla and, you know, funnily enough, I think it was probably quite recently, 18 or so, that I actually realised the amount of atrocities and the amount of things that colonialism really did. And school doesn't really cut it, really, on that level. So I wanted to add that.
I wanted to add to the, like, just following our train of thought in the discussion. I think we treat museums, unfortunately, as libraries in the sense of people should not in the museum, right? When you go to the museum, you're expected to be silent. So I think one of the measures would be if we keep track of how much of an open space talk we made that museum, the more people would be allowed and appreciated, actually encouraged to talk loudly in the museums with each other and maybe supervised in small groups. Right now, there are guides and they are educated in art history, naturally, in the museums every, I don't know, maybe 50 meter or such. But maybe we should, do those exhibitions. But I don't like those exhibitions because it's not a treasury, it's not a bank, it's a museum. It's a public space for art and to communicate through art. So how much people are allowed to talk in the space, I think may be measured. How many hours, at least how many hours. And like in the regulations that parliaments or officials of every country are making, they should add a number. They should force museums to do that at least. Also, I think it's an educational point, but it would be great if we could teach people that art is not something that you gain class and prestige from.
Cultural capital, I think they call it.
I do also think that to that point, when we bring intercultural artists into these spaces, when there are these conversations of DEIA, we're intending on bolstering ourselves and our ability to speak to these cultural, individuals and their lived experiences that we maybe wouldn't have because of our histories as institutions. And so we're trying to give ourselves more credibility, but we're not actually speaking to what those communities actually would like to understand about themselves or like to understand about where they came from. And so, as an American, I know that when I went to college, I actually learned a lot about America's unsavory history. And that was stuff that wasn't taught to me in my AP US history or in my AP World history even. And it took me going to a private institution as a museum studies student and taking my first public history class to learn about some of the very unsavory aspects of American history. But I grew up in Maryland, close to Washington, D.C., and I grew up going to the Smithsonian's and seeing all of these amazing cultural references and all of these, diverse artists and all of these things that, as I'm 27, so I am partially Gen Z, I grew up seeing this stuff and almost idealizing what America was. And as I've grown older, I've started to see that there's this mask that we place over ourselves to try to say that we are able to speak to this diversity because we were founded on this concept of being a country for all and for religious freedom and for people to come and find the American dream. And so a lot of that stuff bolsters a sense of nationalism in this country that is very convoluted and imperfect. Yeah. And so that's the same thing with Kenya and other, British colonies. They faced what was almost whitewashing their history and being told, well, we're not going to talk about those unsavory parts, and you'll have to rediscover your actual culture and who you all are as a public. And then we'll try to adjust to it and change our way of interpreting it. But you have to tell us who that is. And if the museum isn't open to listening to its community, it won't facilitate those discussions like Sarah's asking that it would. Without them understanding that, they can't really say, let's give these guys 3 or 4 hours in an open gallery to have lectures or to have open discussions. So
all I'll say is that, and I hope this isn't nitpicking, but the colonial kind of aspects is a lot deeper in countries like Kenya and other British parts of Africa and India, a hell of a lot more than the United States.
We're on the opposite end of it, of we're the imperialists. People came to us.
We just
said that
you said it, not me.
And then our external actual actions are imperialist. And that's what we've seen in Iraq and Iran and other, Afghanistan, the way that we've handled a lot of world conflicts since probably the 1970s, if not sooner. Those particular instances were turning off our ability to talk about what's unsavory about us. And we're saying, oh, well, America's perfect. We're the world savior. We help everybody, right? And so it's
the world police, I think,
of what Kenya's experiencing. But the individuals like the Native Americans in our country, they faced a lot of oppression. They had the Trail of Tears, all of that stuff in early American colonialism. They have to face some of the same things that Kenyans do. So we're a weird instance of imperialist and also having some of our own culture to rediscover because of how we were imperialist and moving into this area. So there's a difficult history in America that we choose not to talk about a lot. And we're also seeing that currently censored in the Smithsonian, which is very difficult for me personally to see, that a Smithsonian archivist is saying, well, we can't talk about Japanese internment camps during World War II, and we can't talk about, the Trail of Tears and all this other stuff because that's part of our history. And while it's unsavory, the only way we learn from said history and it doesn't repeat itself is talking about these difficult conversations, even if we're not going to be comfortable doing it.
Yeah. And something I'm
sorry,
I
think
because Anna's American, when she says something, I also just want to say something. Yes, but I agree with you, Anna, completely. I just want to add one thing that and now I can't remember what it is. Oh, that just on a side note with capitalism and how that affects art, I've been told that I shouldn't talk about death so much. And I thought that was funny. And when I saw Anna crying yesterday, I've had that experience with when I talk about just solely my mass stitchings pieces. And I just did a talk in Colorado in the winter, and there were like 3 people crying at the end, and I didn't even expect that, but I thought but isn't that really what art is? Am I supposed to stop talking about these mass shootings? I don't know, and I think it's on a universe, the United States on a national level, but it even affects artists like me who I was in a show recently and somebody came up to me, they're like, do you have a gallery? And I said, no. And they said, good. And I was like, for who? Who is that going to I need, support. But that's, that's the thinking, that I shouldn't be saying these things. It's inconvenient. And I'm not making the person who's showing them money.
Yes. And our also it's mostly collections from colonialists too, Lord Croydon's birds, Dr. Leakey's Lord Arrow. I hate the word Lord. Though there's a very interesting French institution called the Museum of British Colonialism that's attempting to undo this work. Anna is so right about redefining Kenyan-ness. I'm from Iran, and so sorry if I cannot pronounce some of the words. Some of these words are hard to pronounce. So to conclude, I think we agree that we should find a measure that's and a metric on how much museum as a public place for communication through art reflect. It is used to reflect, not to pretend, not to serve the ego, but to reflect us as humans, as art always does. Right. In every piece, we're reflecting something, our inner thoughts, our emotions, the situation we're in, and many great paintings that we all love and adore have this quality. Like people, when they look at the Starry Night, they like that sensation that we all share when we look at the stars, and it's kind of feel like magical and otherworldly and amazing, and different kind of emotions that we go through. So the measures, one of the measures should be on how much they are used to reflect the emotions of the community. Also, there was one more thing. There is one more thing that I wanted to add is that even if if we force museums to, for example, exhibit 10 pieces of Black artists from Black artists and like 10 pieces from white artists. I think the budget should be tracked because one of the main problems is how artworks from artists from minority backgrounds is undervalued. So if they are acquiring like 10 pieces, how much was that? Like how much they paid for it, and how much they paid for like white male painter, the artwork of that white male painter. That's an issue really, according to the stats that we give, like we heard yesterday. It's concerning. Usually 30% to 40% lower prices paintings from female painters, even when the artworks are very similar in terms of the medium size and things like that. So that also another thing that I wanted to add, because I am like from Iran and we have completely different approach in politics than US especially, and from West the leader wanted to be different, and it was one of the main slogans of the 1979 revolution was that stop the art of stop the art of the West and nihilism and things like that. They thought the last regime was like invested too much in the Western culture. Okay, so after the revolution, what we learn the most in school in terms of history is how bad every other country in the world treated our country. And in the museums, all museums are forced to only exhibit from Iranian artists, and like especially from Islamic era. If there's an artifact, it should be from Islamic era, and the budget goes to that. And the artists should, when they want to like make, there's a call for auction new artworks, it should have something with being Iranian or being a Muslim, like something like that. And I wanted to say that this didn't help solve anything, any problem, and it's not a good experience for any of us, especially for me, because when you try to define someone's identity, force it anyway. Like when you want to force one narrative, when you want to say that you are not a Westerner, like you don't have that culture, you are an Iranian. Or if you want to force that you are like you are too white and you accustomed to Western, to the culture of the West, when you want to force that, both of these approaches make that person miserable, especially in today's world, because so I'm 29, I'm half Gen Z, so I feel like I am more of a like half global citizen, half Iranian, like a hybrid. So and also yeah, Zillennium, that's the term. And another thing that one of the things that I see mostly in today's America's climate, because we are following America's news and politics because it influences us a lot. It is not the propaganda is the main problem. But if you do it however you do it, and also the thing is that I think Americans take freedom granted, and it is fragile. It is very fragile. History, however you tell it, it can go south very easy. For example, in our books in Iran, the history of Iran is taught in details. We don't know much. Actually, we don't know anything about history of Europe or of America or things like that. We only know our history, okay? And it is in detail, and most of it is true. And there were tyrants. One of them was another. He invaded India 9 times and kind of destroyed the country. Maybe as much as Britain did, but way back in the history. And he is a tyrant in our history, And I remember that I always hated him. But in recent years, because people need to feel like they have a win, they see Nader as a hero. He was an invader. He killed a lot. He was something like Genghis Khan, call it. He was the worst person ever. And people love him. So it's not that much of a solution to reflect on the history. And I don't say that we should just look the other way and ignore our history and our heritage. But I want to mention that it's way more complicated than that. And I want to say that I think the most productive way is to stay in the moment with the people who are living in the moment.
This is a good message. Yeah. Yes. Sara, I'm sorry, we have to follow the program because it's already a little over the time for the discussion. And in 10 minutes it will continue 9 minutes. In 9 minutes it will continue the next session of the speakers. And now we will make a pause of 9-10 minutes and then we'll come back.
Lovely chatting.
Okay. Thank you so much.
David.
Ciao. Bye.